My name is Emma Mitchell, 26 years old, and I never imagined my ordinary Tuesday shift would change my life forever. For 3 years, I've been balancing waitressing at an upscale Manhattan restaurant with pursuing my business degree. Ever since my father disappeared 7 years ago, I've been on my own, working to keep myself afloat in this expensive city. When those important-looking businessmen walked in that day, I had no idea how much my world was about to be turned upside down. When he signed that document, my blood ran cold. I'd recognize that signature anywhere. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're watching this from your phone, make sure to hit subscribe and like this video. I still can't believe this happened to me, and I need to know if you would have done the same thing in my position. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where dreams often stay just that, dreams. My father, Daniel Mitchell, owned a small engineering firm focused on developing sustainable energy solutions. He was brilliant, innovative, and the kindest man I've ever known. He taught me everything about business from the time I could talk. We'd sit at our kitchen table as he explained contracts, signatures, and the importance of attention to detail. Always check the signature, Emma, he'd say. That's where the truth lives. My mother died of cancer when I was 17, leaving just my father and me to lean on each other. We were doing okay, grieving, but managing. Dad poured himself into his work, and I focused on finishing high school with top grades. He was so proud when I got accepted to college in New York. "This is your chance to build something bigger than I ever could," he told me. But 2 months after I started college, everything fell apart. I came home for the weekend to find our house empty. Dad was gone. His clothes, his briefcase, his favorite books, all still there. But he had vanished, leaving only a handwritten note that said, "I'm sorry, Emma. I love you more than anything. Someday you'll understand." The police investigation went nowhere. His company abruptly closed. His bank accounts showed no unusual activity. It was as if he'd simply disappeared. I was devastated, confused, and suddenly completely alone at 19 years old. I had to drop out of college that first year. I couldn't afford the tuition without Dad's support. I worked 3 jobs and saved every penny until I could move to New York and restart my education 2 years later. Now I'm in my final year of my business degree at a state university, taking night classes while working full-time at La Maison, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. My apartment in Queens is tiny, barely 400 square feet that I share with my roommate Jenna, a dancer trying to make it on Broadway. Between rent, tuition, and student loans, every dollar counts. I wake up at 5 a.m. for morning classes, work the lunch and dinner shift at La Maison, then study until my eyes can't stay open. It's exhausting, but I'm determined to graduate and make something of myself, to make my father proud wherever he is. La Maison caters to Wall Street executives and the business elite. The tips are good, which is why I stay despite the often condescending treatment from customers. My manager, Brian, is fair but strict. "These people pay our bills," he often reminds us. "Keep them happy, keep your opinions to yourself, and you'll do fine here." Over the years, I've served CEOs, politicians, and celebrities. I've developed a knack for remembering faces, orders, and yes, signatures on credit card receipts. That's something Dad taught me that stuck. "A signature is as unique as a fingerprint," he'd say. I could identify our regular customers' signatures as easily as their faces. The restaurant has a core group of regulars: Harold Pierce, who always orders the lobster bisque, Madison Turner, who's allergic to garlic, and Thomas Wright, who tips exactly 22% every time. There's a routine to it all, a predictability that's comforting given how unpredictable my life has been. Jenna is always telling me I need to relax more, to go out and have fun like other 20-somethings. "You're working yourself to death," she'll say after finding me asleep at our kitchen table, face down in my accounting textbook. But I can't slow down. Something inside me needs to prove that I can succeed, that my father's disappearance didn't break me. I still search for him. On my rare days off, I'll scour social media, check news articles about missing persons, and even call old family friends back in Ohio. The trail has been cold for years, but I can't give up. It's like there's a hole in my life that nothing else can fill. What I didn't know then was that the answers I'd been searching for were about to walk right through the doors of La Maison, bringing with them a truth more complicated and painful than I could have imagined. My alarm failed me that Tuesday. I woke up 20 minutes late, already behind schedule for my 8 a.m. business ethics class. Professor Winters locks the door exactly on the hour, no exceptions. I threw on clothes, grabbed my textbook, and ran the 6 blocks to campus, slipping into my seat with seconds to spare, hair still wet from my rushed shower. Class ran over, which meant I was rushing again to make it to La Maison for my 11 a.m. pre-lunch setup. Brian's face told me I was cutting it close as I tied my apron and checked the reservation list. "We've got a VIP 12 top at 1 p.m., he said, sliding the reservation card to me. "Richard Blackwell and executives from Blackwell Industries. They've requested the private dining room." My stomach tightened. Everyone in the restaurant industry knew about Richard Blackwell, Billionaire CEO, notorious for his demanding nature and tendency to get servers fired if they so much as refilled his water glass at the wrong moment. His company, Blackwell Industries, was one of the largest conglomerates in the country, with holdings in everything from technology to real estate. "Great," I muttered, earning a sharp look from Brian. "Emma, I'm serious. They spend more here in one lunch than most tables do in a month. No mistakes today." I nodded and focused on preparing the private dining room to perfection, polishing already spotless glasses, aligning silverware with mathematical precision, making sure the temperature was exactly 72 degrees as Mr. Blackwell reportedly preferred. They arrived precisely at 1 p.m., 12 men in suits that probably cost more than my annual rent. Richard Blackwell led the procession, tall and imposing with silver hair and cold blue eyes that didn't crinkle when he smiled. He didn't acknowledge me as I greeted them, continuing his conversation as if I were invisible. "The Mitchell acquisition is finally paying off," he was saying to a younger executive beside him. 7 years of development, but the patents alone were worth the hassle. The name caught my attention. Mitchell wasn't an uncommon surname, but it sent a small jolt through me nonetheless. I maintained my professional demeanor as I took their drink orders and recited the day's specials. 2 of the men interrupted me mid-sentence to take calls. Another complained that his chair wasn't comfortable enough. I smiled through it all, remembering that these tables often resulted in 3-figure tips. When I returned with their drinks, Blackwell was discussing business more intensely. "The energy efficiency ratings are through the roof. Once we announce the integration of the Mitchell technology into our consumer products, our stock will soar." "What about the original patents?" one executive asked. "Any risk there?" Blackwell laughed coldly. "None. Mitchell is completely out of the picture. Permanently." Something about his tone sent a chill down my spine. Mitchell. Energy technology. My father's specialty. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Throughout their lunch, I caught fragments of conversation that made my heart race. Mitchell Innovations, my father's company name. Revolutionary energy storage. Complete acquisition. Words that painted a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see clearly. As they finished their main course, Blackwell pulled a leather portfolio from his briefcase. "Gentlemen, let's make this official. The final integration documents for Mitchell Innovations technology." I was clearing plates when he uncapped an expensive-looking fountain pen and signed with a flourish on the last page. The signature leapt out at me like a shock of cold water. The distinctive looping D, the sharp angle on the M, the way the final L curled back under the name. I'd seen that signature thousands of times, on permission slips, birthday cards, business documents spread across our dining table. The room seemed to tilt. Without thinking, I spoke. "Excuse me, but that's my father's signature. How is that possible?" The table fell silent. 11 pairs of eyes turned to me in shock, but Richard Blackwell's remained cool, calculating. "Excuse me?" His voice was quiet, dangerous. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop now. "That signature. It looks exactly like my father's, Daniel Mitchell. I'd know it anywhere. A tense silence filled the room. Blackwell's expression shifted from annoyance to something more complex. "Brian," he called, not taking his eyes off me. My manager appeared instantly at the doorway. "Mr. Blackwell, I apologize for any." "I'd like to speak to this young woman privately," Blackwell interrupted. "Now." Brian's face paled as he looked at me. I expected to be fired on the spot, but instead, he nodded and gestured for me to follow Blackwell to our small conference room. As I walked out, I heard one executive whisper, "Is that Mitchell's daughter?" Blackwell closed the door behind us and turned to me with cold fury in his eyes. "What exactly do you know about Daniel Mitchell?" he asked. The conference room felt smaller with Richard Blackwell's commanding presence filling it. His expensive cologne, something subtle and masculine that probably cost more than my weekly salary, hung in the air between us. I stood with my back against the wall, acutely aware of my waitress uniform and the power imbalance between us. "I asked you a question," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "What do you know about Daniel Mitchell?" I straightened my shoulders, finding courage from somewhere deep inside me. "He's my father. He disappeared 7 years ago without explanation. And that was his signature on your document." Blackwell's expression remained impassive, but something flashed in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or calculation. "Do you have any idea who I am, young lady?" he asked. "Yes. You're Richard Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Industries." "Then you should understand that interrupting my private business meeting with absurd accusations could result in significant legal consequences for both you and this establishment." My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady. "I'm not making accusations. I'm stating a fact. That signature looks identical to my father's. And you mentioned Mitchell Innovations, that was his company." Blackwell studied me for a long moment, then sighed and pulled out a chair. "Sit down, Miss Mitchell. Emma Mitchell." A flicker of recognition crossed his face. He sat across from me, placing his manicured hands on the table between us. "I knew your father," he said finally. My heart lurched. After 7 years of searching, of questions without answers, someone finally knew something. "Where is he? Is he alive? What happened to him?" The questions tumbled out before I could stop them. Blackwell held up a hand. "Calm yourself. Yes, I knew Daniel Mitchell. Blackwell Industries acquired his company, Mitchell Innovations, 7 years ago. It was a standard business acquisition, nothing more. Then why did he disappear? Why would he just leave without explanation? And why are you signing documents with what looks like his signature?" Anger flashed across Blackwell's face. "I don't appreciate your tone, Miss Mitchell. The document I signed bears my own signature, not your father's. Perhaps there's a resemblance that's confused you." "I would never confuse another signature for my father's," I insisted. "He taught me to recognize the unique characteristics of handwriting. I've seen his signature thousands of times." Blackwell's jaw tightened. "Your father's company had developed promising technology in sustainable energy storage. We made him a generous offer. He accepted it. That doesn't explain why he disappeared. Some people, when they suddenly come into significant wealth, choose to start over. Change their identities, leave their old lives behind." Hot tears sprang to my eyes. "No. My father would never abandon me for money. Never." Blackwell's expression softened artificially. "People aren't always who we think they are, Miss Mitchell. Your father made his choice. He chose to disappear." "You're lying," I whispered. "Something happened to him." "Did you do something to him?" His eyes turned cold. "Be very careful with your accusations, young woman. Very careful indeed." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, sliding it across the table. "If you want to know more about your father, come to my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Alone." I stared at the card, heavy stock paper, embossed lettering, the Blackwell Industries logo gleaming in silver foil. "Why would you tell me anything?" "Perhaps I admire your courage," he said, standing. "Or perhaps I simply want to clear up this misunderstanding before you make claims that could damage my reputation." When Blackwell left, Brian rushed into the room, his face pale. "Emma, what were you thinking? Do you have any idea how important his business is to us?" "He knows what happened to my father, Brian. I have to find out what it is." Brian's expression shifted from anger to concern. "Listen to me. Richard Blackwell is one of the most powerful men in this city. People who cross him tend to regret it. Whatever you think you know, whatever you're planning, be careful." I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. As soon as my shift ended, I rushed home to my apartment and powered up my laptop. I searched everything I could find about Richard Blackwell and Blackwell Industries. The results painted a disturbing picture. Dozens of small companies acquired under questionable circumstances. Former business owners who claimed they were coerced into selling. Lawsuits settled out of court with strict non-disclosure agreements. Richard Blackwell had built his empire by consuming smaller companies, often innovative startups with promising technology. I searched specifically for information about Mitchell Innovations, but found almost nothing. A few old articles mentioning my father's work in sustainable energy, but no coverage of its acquisition by Blackwell Industries. It was as if the company had simply vanished, just like my father. At midnight, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello? Stop asking questions about Blackwell and your father." The voice was disguised, mechanical. "Some doors shouldn't be opened." "Who is this?" I demanded, but the call disconnected. I sat in the darkness of my apartment, the phone still clutched in my hand. Whoever had called knew I was investigating. I was getting close to something someone wanted to keep hidden. Instead of scaring me off, the call only strengthened my resolve. Tomorrow, I would meet with Richard Blackwell and demand the truth about my father. Blackwell Tower dominated the Manhattan skyline, a gleaming monolith of glass and steel rising 68 stories above the city streets. I stood at its base the next morning, my reflection distorted in the mirrored exterior as I gathered my courage. Inside my purse was a small notebook with questions for Blackwell, a photo of my father, and a recorder hidden in my jacket pocket. New York was a one-party consent state for recordings. I'd researched that last night. The lobby was a cathedral to corporate success, soaring ceilings, marble floors, and a massive sculpture that probably cost more than my entire education. Security was tight. I had to surrender my ID, pass through a metal detector, and receive a temporary visitor's badge before being escorted to a private elevator. "Mr. Blackwell's office is on the top floor," the security guard informed me. "His assistant will meet you there." The elevator ascended with barely a whisper, my stomach dropping as the numbers climbed higher. When the doors opened, I stepped into a reception area decorated in chrome and white leather. A poised woman with a sleek bob cut looked up from behind a curved desk. "Miss Mitchell," she said without warmth. "Mr. Blackwell is in a meeting. You'll need to wait." I sat on an uncomfortable modernist chair that seemed designed to keep visitors off balance. On the walls hung photographs of Blackwell with politicians, celebrities, and world leaders. A trophy case displayed various business awards and recognition. Everything screamed power and success. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. The assistant ignored me, focused on her computer and occasionally answering calls in a hushed voice. I recognized the tactic: make me wait, remind me of my insignificance in Blackwell's world. I refused to let it rattle me. Finally, at 11:45 a.m., the assistant's phone buzzed. "Mr. Blackwell will see you now," she announced, gesturing to a set of double doors. Blackwell's office was larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, the city sprawling like a miniature model far below. He sat behind a massive desk of polished black stone, the skyline at his back making him appear as if he were floating above the world. "Miss Mitchell," he greeted me without standing. I'm a busy man, so let's make this brief. I took a seat across from him, noting the folder on his desk with my name on it. He'd been researching me. Thank you for meeting with me, I said, working to keep my voice steady. I want to know what happened to my father. Blackwell studied me for a moment. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. You impressed me with your boldness. Not many people would confront me the way you did. He pressed an intercom button. Janet, hold all my calls for the next 30 minutes. Turning back to me, his expression shifted into something almost paternal. Emma, may I call you Emma? I'd like to offer you an opportunity. This wasn't what I'd expected. An opportunity? A position at Blackwell Industries. Entry-level management track, but with accelerated advancement potential. Starting salary of $90,000, full benefits, and tuition reimbursement to complete your degree. I stared at him in disbelief. You want to hire me? You clearly have initiative and intelligence. Those are qualities I value in my organization. The position would start immediately. And what about my father? Blackwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's part of our discussion. The position comes with one condition: you sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding Daniel Mitchell and any claims about his signature or his relationship with my company. So that was it. He was trying to buy my silence. I didn't come here for a job, I said firmly. I came for the truth. Blackwell sighed, leaning back in his chair. I was hoping we could handle this professionally. He opened the folder on his desk. Very well. The truth, then. He turned the folder toward me. Inside was a document, a sales agreement for Mitchell Innovations, dated 7 years ago. Your father's company had developed an energy storage system that was years ahead of its time. We offered to acquire it. After initial resistance, he agreed to sell for $30 million. I scanned the document, my eyes fixing on the signature at the bottom. It looked like my father's, but something felt wrong. Where is he now? I demanded. Part of his agreement included relocation. He wanted a fresh start, away from his former life. We facilitated that transition. You expect me to believe he took money and abandoned me? Without even saying goodbye? Blackwell's expression hardened. People make surprising choices when large sums of money are involved. Perhaps he felt guilty. Perhaps he thought you were old enough to manage without him. I can't speak to his motivations. I studied the contract more carefully, noticing subtle differences in the signature compared to my memory of my father's handwriting. The pressure points were wrong. The final loop angled slightly differently. This signature isn't right, I said. The M is too angular. My father always had a rounder M dot. Irritation flashed across Blackwell's face. This meeting is becoming tiresome, Miss Mitchell. I've shown you the agreement. I've offered you a generous opportunity. What more do you want? I want to know where my father is. That information is not mine to give. He closed the folder decisively. Now, my offer remains open until the end of the week. $90,000 a year, benefits, career advancement. All you need to do is sign the NDA and move forward with your life. He stood, indicating our meeting was over. Janet will show you out. Think carefully about my offer, Emma. Opportunities like this don't come along often. As I walked toward the door, a thought struck me. Mr. Blackwell, if my father took your money and disappeared voluntarily, why are you so eager to pay me to stop asking questions? His smile turned cold. Good day, Miss Mitchell. In the elevator descending from Blackwell's office, I found myself alone with a woman who had entered at the last moment. She was in her 40s, professionally dressed, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. You're Daniel Mitchell's daughter, she said quietly once the doors closed. My heart skipped. How do you? I worked with your father at Mitchell Innovations. I'm Sophia Reeves. She glanced nervously at the elevator's security camera. I can't talk here. Riverside Park, near the 79th Street entrance. 7 tonight. She exited on the next floor, leaving me stunned and hopeful. For the first time in 7 years, I might get real answers about my father's disappearance. I spent the afternoon in a nearby library, researching everything I could about Richard Blackwell's business practices and acquisitions from 7 years ago. There were patterns: innovative small companies disappearing into Blackwell Industries, their founders often dropping out of public life entirely. What had happened to all those people? What had happened to my father? At 7, I arrived at Riverside Park, scanning the area nervously for Sophia. The spring evening was cool, cherry blossoms floating on the breeze as joggers and dog walkers enjoyed the waterfront. I spotted her on a bench overlooking the Hudson River, a scarf partially concealing her face. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat beside her. "I'd been debating whether to reach out to you for years." "You knew my father?" "I was his lead research partner at Mitchell Innovations. We developed the energy storage technology together." "What happened to him?" "Please, I need to know." Sophia looked around nervously before speaking. "The contract Blackwell showed you was forged. Your father never agreed to sell willingly." My breath caught. I knew something wasn't right about the signature. Blackwell wanted your father's technology desperately. When Daniel refused to sell, they began pressuring him, subtle threats at first, then more explicit ones. "What kind of threats?" Sophia's eyes met mine. "Threats against you, Emma. They made it clear that if you didn't cooperate, you would suffer the consequences. They had photographs of you at college, details about your schedule, your friends." Horror washed over me. So he disappeared to protect me? He felt he had no choice. Blackwell's people arranged everything: new identity, relocation to another country. The condition was that he could never contact you or anyone from his former life. But the technology. Blackwell's been using it for years, making billions. But here's what you need to know, Emma. She reached into her bag and handed me a small flash drive. Your father was smarter than Blackwell realized. He filed patents under a separate holding company before Blackwell ever approached him. Patents that legally prevent Blackwell from using the technology the way he has been. I stared at the flash drive in my palm. This proves it? Everything's there: the original patents, documentation of the threats, evidence of the forged contracts. Your father created a digital trail, hoping someday it would be safe to expose what happened. Have you heard from him? Is he alive? Sophia hesitated. I received an encrypted email about a year ago. He's alive, but that's all I know. Hope surged through me. With this evidence, we could go to the authorities, expose Blackwell. Be careful, Emma, Sophia warned. Blackwell destroys anyone who challenges him. People have lost everything, some have even disappeared. Don't underestimate how far he'll go to protect what he's built. As we parted, Sophia squeezed my hand. Your father was a good man. He sacrificed everything for you. I'm going to make this right, I promised. I'll make Blackwell pay for what he did. Just be smart about it. Be safe. With that, she walked away, disappearing into the growing darkness. I clutched the flash drive, feeling its weight in my hand, heavier than its physical presence, laden with the truth I'd been seeking for 7 years. My father hadn't abandoned me. He'd been protecting me all along. Now it was my turn to protect him by exposing the man who had destroyed our lives. This is insane, Emma, Jenna said, pacing our tiny apartment kitchen. You're talking about going up against one of the most powerful men in the country. It was past midnight. I'd spent hours reviewing the contents of Sophia's flash drive, patent documents, emails, financial records, and most disturbingly, surveillance photos of me from 7 years ago. The evidence painted a damning picture of corporate espionage, forgery, and criminal coercion. I know it sounds crazy, I admitted, but this proves everything. My father never abandoned me. Blackwell forced him into hiding with threats against me. Jenna sat beside me, concern etched across her face. What are you planning to do? I need to find a lawyer who'll take this case. And how exactly will you afford that? We can barely make rent this month. She had a point. The next day, I contacted every law firm in Manhattan that specialized in corporate litigation. Most wouldn't even grant me a consultation. The few who did listen to my story declined to take the case once I mentioned Blackwell Industries. "I'm sorry, Miss Mitchell," one attorney told me bluntly. "Blackwell has an army of lawyers on retainer. They'd bury us in motions and paperwork. And frankly, going against someone like Richard Blackwell is bad for business." By the end of the week, I'd exhausted my list of potential legal allies. I returned to La Maison for my evening shift, distracted and frustrated. "Emma," in my office, Brian called as soon as I arrived. I knew what was coming before he said it. "I'm sorry, but we have to let you go," he said, not meeting my eyes. "It's nothing personal." "It's Blackwell, isn't it?" Brian sighed. "He's one of our most valuable clients. His company holds events here that keep us in business. He made it clear that your continued employment would jeopardize that relationship." I turned in my apron and name tag without argument. Outside, I counted the cash in my wallet, $67. My bank account held less than $500. Rent was due in 10 days. Desperate, I tried contacting old friends of my father, former colleagues, anyone who might have information or be willing to help. Each lead hit a dead end. Some seemed genuinely frightened at the mention of Blackwell's name. Others simply refused to talk. 2 days later, I remembered my father had kept a storage unit in Queens where he stored old research materials and personal items. I'd maintained the payments all these years, unable to part with that last physical connection to him. Perhaps there was something there that could help. The storage facility was in a rundown industrial area. The manager barely glanced at my ID before handing me the key. The unit was small, packed with boxes of papers, old equipment, and personal belongings I hadn't been able to face after his disappearance. I spent hours digging through the contents. Most of the technical documents were beyond my understanding, but I knew enough from my business courses to recognize the importance of what I found buried in a locked file box: original patent applications with my father's authentic signature, predating Blackwell's acquisition of Mitchell Innovations. "You brilliant man," I whispered, realizing what my father had done. He'd secretly patented his most valuable innovations under a separate company name, Mitchell Energy Trust, with himself as the sole beneficiary. According to the documentation, Blackwell never acquired these patents, meaning his company had been using the technology illegally for years. It was the leverage I needed. With renewed hope, I carefully packed the documents and headed home. I arrived to find our apartment door slightly ajar. Inside, chaos greeted me: furniture overturned, drawers emptied, my laptop smashed on the floor. My heart racing, I called out for Jenna. A groan came from the bathroom. I found her sitting on the floor, holding a bloody towel to her forehead. "Oh my God! What happened?" I helped her up, checking her wound. "2 men," she said shakily. "They were already here when I got home. They said they were looking for documents and a flash drive. When I tried to call the police, one of them pushed me. I hit my head on the sink. Cold dread washed over me. Did they find anything? I don't know. They tore the place apart. I frantically searched my hiding spots. The flash drive Sophia had given me was gone. So was my notebook with all my research on Blackwell. Fury and fear warred within me as I helped Jenna to the couch. "Emma, what have you gotten yourself into?" I couldn't lie to her anymore. I explained everything: my father's disappearance, Blackwell's threats, the evidence of corporate theft and forgery. Jenna listened in stunned silence. "We need to go to the police," she said when I finished. "With what?" "They took all my evidence." "Not all of it." I showed her the documents I'd just retrieved from the storage unit. "You're still planning to fight him, aren't you?" Jenna asked, wincing as she adjusted the ice pack on her forehead. "I have to. He's the reason my father disappeared. Now he's breaking into our home, hurting my friends. It has to stop." Jenna squeezed my hand. Just be careful. These aren't people who play by the rules. After taking Jenna to the emergency room for stitches, I checked us into a cheap motel. I couldn't risk going back to the apartment. As Jenna slept, I sat by the window, watching the parking lot and wondering how much danger we were in. My phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood froze. It was a photograph of my father, older, grayer, but unmistakably him. He was sitting on a bench in what looked like a European plaza, reading a newspaper. The timestamp on the photo showed it was taken just 3 days ago. Below the image was a message, "Stop or you'll never see him again." For a moment, doubt crept in. Was it worth risking my father's life? Should I take Blackwell's job offer and forget everything I'd learned? As dawn broke, my phone rang. It was Sophia. "Are you safe?" she asked immediately. "For now." They broke into my apartment, took the flash drive. I feared this might happen. That's why I kept backups. She paused. "Emma, your father contacted me. He wants to meet you." My heart leapt. When? Where? It's complicated. He's been living under an assumed identity in Portugal. Blackwell's people still monitor him, but he's created a window of opportunity. 3 days from now. I'll be there. Whatever it takes. It's dangerous, Emma. If Blackwell discovers you're meeting your father. I don't care. I've spent 7 years not knowing if he was alive or dead. Nothing will stop me from seeing him now. As I hung up, a new determination filled me. Blackwell had taken enough from us. It was time to fight back. The abandoned factory on the outskirts of Newark looked like something from a post-apocalyptic film: broken windows, rusted metal, and graffiti-covered walls. Sophia's instructions had been precise: enter through the loading dock, go to the second floor, and wait in the former manager's office. Trust no one but my father or her. My heart pounded as I navigated the dilapidated building, jumping at every creak and shadow. After 7 years of questions and sleepless nights, I was about to see my father again, if this wasn't a trap. The office was dusty but relatively intact, with a metal desk and several chairs arranged in a small circle. I checked my watch. 10 minutes early. Footsteps echoed from the corridor. I pressed myself against the wall beside the door, clutching the pepper spray in my pocket. The steps grew closer, then stopped outside the door. "Emma," a familiar voice called softly. My breath caught in my throat. Despite the years, I would know that voice anywhere. "Dad?" The door opened slowly, and there he stood, Daniel Mitchell, my father. His once dark hair was now salt and pepper, lines etched around his eyes and mouth that hadn't been there before. But his eyes, those kind, intelligent eyes that had watched me grow up, were the same. "Emma," he breathed, his voice breaking. We collided in an embrace so fierce it nearly knocked us over. 7 years of separation poured out in tears and breathless words. "I thought I'd never see you again," I sobbed into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "God, I'm so sorry." We sank into chairs, still clutching each other's hands as if afraid the other might disappear. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I thought you abandoned me." Pain crossed his face. It was the hardest decision of my life. Blackwell's people showed me surveillance photos of you at college, your dorm room, your class schedule. They made it very clear what would happen if I didn't cooperate. He squeezed my hands. "I couldn't risk your safety. I thought I was protecting you." "How did you escape?" "I didn't, not really. They've kept me under surveillance in Portugal all these years. I work for one of Blackwell's subsidiary companies under an assumed name, continuing my research but with all patents assigned to Blackwell Industries." He gave a bitter laugh. "My own personal prison, courtesy of Richard Blackwell. But you're here now. Sophia has been my only contact with home. When she told me you'd confronted Blackwell, that you'd found the evidence I left behind." He shook his head in wonder. I knew I had to risk coming back. The surveillance has relaxed over the years. I created a cover story about visiting a specialist in Switzerland. It gave me a 5-day window. Sophia arrived minutes later, closing the door behind her. "We don't have much time," she said. "Blackwell's security team will be looking for both of you." My father nodded. "Emma, what you discovered in the storage unit, those patents filed under Mitchell Energy Trust, they're the key. I registered them just before Blackwell approached me, sensing something wasn't right about their interest in my company." "Blackwell's been using your technology illegally all this time," I said. "Yes, and making billions from it. The energy storage system is now integrated into everything from cell phones to electric vehicles. But they've been operating under the assumption that they acquired all intellectual property rights." "I have the patents," I told him. "But all our other evidence was stolen when they broke into my apartment." Sophia smiled for the first time. "Not all of it." She removed a small device from her purse. "I kept duplicate copies of everything in a secure location. Financial records, emails, the surveillance photos of you, and most importantly, recordings of meetings where Blackwell and his lawyers discussed the forged contracts and coercion tactics." My father looked at me with concern. "Going public with this would be dangerous. Blackwell won't hesitate to destroy anyone who threatens his empire." "He's already tried," I said, telling them about the break-in, Jenna's injury, and losing my job. "I'm not backing down. Not after what he did to our family." Together, we formed a plan. My father had been secretly gathering his own evidence for years, documenting everything from within Blackwell's organization. Combined with Sophia's records and the original patents, we had a compelling case. But rather than going directly to authorities, where Blackwell's influence might bury our claims, we would confront him directly with an ultimatum. 2 days later, I walked into Blackwell Tower for the second time. I'd called Richard Blackwell's office, claiming I wanted to accept his job offer. Surprisingly, he agreed to meet me personally. This time, his executive assistant led me straight into his office without delay. Blackwell stood at the window, looking out over the city he considered his domain. "I'm pleased you've reconsidered my offer, Miss Mitchell," he said without turning. "I think you'll find working for Blackwell Industries quite rewarding." "Actually," I replied calmly, "I'm here to make you an offer." He turned, his expression darkening as he saw the file in my hands. I thought we'd moved past this unpleasantness. "Did you really think breaking into my apartment and stealing one flash drive would solve your problem?" I placed the file on his desk. "That was just a copy. We have multiple backups of everything." "We?" His eyes narrowed. "My father sends his regards, Mr. Blackwell." A flicker of shock crossed his face before he masked it. "I don't know what game you're playing." "No games. Just facts." I opened the file, spreading documents across his desk. Original patents for the energy storage technology, filed under Mitchell Energy Trust. Financial records showing Blackwell Industries has generated over $12 billion using technology it doesn't legally own. Recordings of your lawyers discussing how to forge my father's signature. Surveillance photos proving you threatened and coerced him. Blackwell's face remained impassive, but I noticed his hand trembling slightly as he examined the documents. "What do you want?" "Restoration of Mitchell Innovations to its rightful owner. Public acknowledgement that my father's technology was acquired through fraudulent means. Financial compensation for 7 years of illegal use of patented technology." He laughed coldly. "You're delusional. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? One phone call and I can make these documents disappear along with you and your father." I smiled. "I thought you might say that." I removed my phone from my pocket, showing him the active call. "Say hello to Special Agent Roberts of the FBI Economic Crimes Unit. He's been listening to our conversation with great interest." "You're bluffing," Blackwell snarled, reaching for the phone. The door to his office opened, revealing not only federal agents but my father. "Hello, Richard," my father said quietly. "It's been a long time." The color drained from Blackwell's face as agents entered his office. Richard Blackwell, the lead agent, announced, "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, fraud, and criminal coercion." As agents led Blackwell away, he fixed me with a venomous glare. "You have no idea what you've done." "Actually," I replied, "I know exactly what I've done. I've finally gotten justice for my father." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media coverage, and corporate fallout. Blackwell Industries stock plummeted as the scandal unfolded. Richard Blackwell, facing overwhelming evidence and testimony from former employees who'd been silenced by NDAs, agreed to a plea deal that would still send him to federal prison for 8 years. Mitchell Innovations was legally restored to my father, along with substantial financial compensation. The patents that Blackwell had been using illegally were now properly licensed, ensuring both recognition and ongoing royalties for my father's groundbreaking work. Most importantly, my father was free from hiding, free from fear, free to reclaim his identity and his life. We watched the news reports together in a hotel suite, still processing the reality that our 7-year nightmare was finally over. "I still can't believe we did it," I said, as headlines announced Blackwell's downfall. My father squeezed my hand. "You did it, Emma. Your courage, your persistence, you never gave up. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. What happens now?" He looked thoughtful. "Mitchell Innovations needs rebuilding. The technology has evolved since I've been gone. There's so much potential that Blackwell never fully developed because he was focused only on profit. We'll rebuild it together," I said. "I'm nearly finished with my business degree, you know." He smiled, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Partners, then?" "Partners," I agreed, feeling for the first time in 7 years that my future had purpose and direction again. 1 year later, I stood on the stage in my cap and gown, accepting my business degree with honors. In the audience, my father applauded loudly, pride evident on his face. Beside him sat Jenna, Sophia, and several new friends and colleagues from the reconstituted Mitchell Innovations. So much had changed in 12 months. With the legal battle behind us and substantial compensation from Blackwell Industries, my father had relaunched his company with a renewed focus on ethical innovation and sustainable technology. I joined as Chief Operating Officer immediately after graduation, putting my business education to work alongside my father's technical genius. Our first office was modest, a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn with concrete floors and exposed brick walls. We started with just 12 employees, including Sophia, who now headed our research department. But what we lacked in size, we made up for in vision and determination. Mitchell Innovations isn't just about making money, my father told our small team during our first company meeting. It's about creating technology that improves lives while respecting our planet. And it's about doing business with integrity, something this company was founded on and something we lost sight of when others took control. The media narrative around our story had shifted from corporate scandal to redemption tale. Business journals highlighted the Mitchell method of ethical innovation. Universities invited us to speak about corporate responsibility. Our story became a case study in business ethics courses, including the one I had taken just a year earlier. The company flourished beyond our expectations. Our energy storage technology, now properly attributed and legally licensed, continued to revolutionize multiple industries. But more importantly, we developed new applications that Blackwell had ignored because they weren't immediately profitable: affordable energy solutions for developing nations, emergency power systems for disaster relief, and grid stabilization technology to support renewable energy adoption. Richard Blackwell's empire, meanwhile, had crumbled. Many of the companies he'd acquired through questionable means were spun off or restored to their original owners as part of the settlement. Former executives who had enabled his tactics faced their own legal consequences. The man who had once seemed untouchable was serving his sentence in a federal prison, his reputation destroyed. We established the Mitchell Foundation for Innovation Ethics, using a portion of our settlement to support whistleblowers and victims of corporate fraud. The foundation also funded scholarships for students interested in both technology and business ethics, creating a new generation of entrepreneurs who understood that success didn't have to come at the expense of integrity. One spring afternoon, I found my father in his office, staring at a framed photograph of us from before his disappearance. Me at my high school graduation, both of us smiling, unaware of what lay ahead. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Standing up to Blackwell all those years ago, even though it cost us so much time together?" He considered the question carefully. "I regret the years we lost. I regret not finding a way to tell you the truth. But standing by my principles? No, I don't regret that." He smiled gently. "And look at what you became because of it. Would you have found this strength if life had been easier?" I thought about the frightened 19-year-old girl who'd been abandoned, the determined waitress working double shifts to pay for college, and now the business executive helping rebuild her father's legacy. "I would have preferred an easier path to finding my strength," I admitted with a laugh. "But I understand what you mean." My father nodded. "Life rarely gives us perfect choices, Emma. Just the opportunity to make the best decision we can with the information we have. The rest is about living with those choices and finding the courage to change course when necessary." We had both made difficult choices, he to disappear in order to protect me, and I to pursue the truth regardless of the risk. Those choices had cost us dearly but had ultimately brought us back together with a deeper appreciation for justice, integrity, and the power of perseverance. That evening, I sat at my desk signing company documents. My signature, Emma Mitchell, COO, flowed across the page in confident strokes. It wasn't identical to my father's signature, but there was a resemblance in the looping M and the decisive final stroke. A signature of my own, but carrying echoes of the lessons he had taught me. Beside the documents lay a photo of our new team standing in front of the Mitchell Innovation sign. Different faces, a new beginning, but the same core values that had started it all. Our story wasn't just about corporate justice or family reunion. It was about the courage to speak truth to power, to stand up for what's right even when the odds seem insurmountable. It was about recognizing that sometimes the hardest path is ultimately the one that leads to healing and wholeness. I looked out my office window at the New York skyline, thinking of that waitress who had recognized her father's signature and spoken up despite the risks. Sometimes the smallest moments of courage can change everything. Thank you all for watching this video and staying with me through this incredible journey. If you've ever had to make a difficult choice between what's easy and what's right, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Has there been a moment in your life where speaking up changed everything? Please like and subscribe to see more stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary courage. And remember, sometimes the smallest act of bravery can set in motion changes you never imagined possible. Until next time.